I think life in 10 minutes, or really any kind of writing experience, really lends itself to the audio experience too.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's not just about writing, it's also about reading your work out loud, hearing it read out loud,
Yeah.
and then being able to share it with other people. So the listening experience is really as important as the writing experience in so many ways.
Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what do you notice with that in terms of how people read? Yeah, obviously we all pick up on each other's reading habit or writing habits and talk about that a little bit, but I'm sure you're also noticing people's reading habits.
Yeah, something really just incredibly different happens for people. They might be writing about something that's very emotional or a big experience from their past, but 9 times out of 10, they don't feel that emotion in the same way, in a real way, until they read it out loud. And that's when you see people start to have their body has a physical reaction. The crying, the heat comes up when they're reading it rather than when they're writing it. It brings it to life in just a completely different way. Plus, some people's stories, their voices feel like such an integral part. Their literal speaking voice is such an integral part of the story itself. People can really animate their stories in a way that maybe no one else could for them, or that when you're reading it on the page, it just doesn't come across the same way.
Yeah, I think about that for myself for sure, that like the act of reading is a pretty critical step in the process. And sometimes I find myself, the same way I would draft a new piece of writing or like tweak some words, it's like if I were to read that again, I would read it differently. I would put my emphasis different, that kind of
Absolutely.
thing.
Yes. That's so true. Because when I read something out loud, I understand what I'm trying to say in a different way than when I'm writing, because writing is kind of that stream of consciousness where you're kind of letting go of the thinking brain and you're just trying to kind of allow what's coming to come out of you. But when you hear it, you process it in a different way. And when I'm reading things back to myself, I often change some words, change the way things sound a little bit, because I realize that's going to sound more natural coming out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And so we bring it, it's like being animated. It's like Frankenstein's all these parts laying together on the table versus that breath of air with the electricity, and he comes to life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. It brings it to life. I know something for me, well, let me ask it this way. You've offered before, like I was in your sacred circle this past Saturday at your house, and you said, you have the option to not read what you wrote. You can just discuss what you wrote and tell us a little bit about it. And I've heard you say it before, but I've never been with anybody actually like skip the reading process.
Yeah.
Do people do that often?
No, it's very rare that people skip the reading process. I think a lot of people think they want to skip it
Yes.
and they're like, "Oh my God, this is terrifying. I don't want to read it." But then when they start hearing other people read their pieces, they begin to understand what a huge gift it is on both ends, both to be the listener and the receiver, and to be the reader. And because it's a way of really opening your heart up in a very vulnerable way. When we talk about something, we're a few steps removed from the actual writing of it. And I mean, I'd say 999 times out of 1,000, people do end up reading
Yeah.
their work. And there are a few circumstances where people have asked not to read it, and I just completely understand that. I respect
Yeah,
that.
of
Yeah.
course. I uh I ask because like, I guess I've picked up on that with my own classes too, where sometimes telling people that you're gonna read what you wrote feels like the step that's the hardest sell. Like people squirm a little bit. But then,
Yeah.
like you said, I think there's something in us that really wants our stories to be told and wants to live in a world where we can tell them.
It's so
Uh,
true. Yeah. We
yeah.
do. We want to be seen. And we don't want to be seen. And we want to be seen. And we don't want to be seen. So like stepping out into that. And once you do it and you realize that no one around you has died because they've listened to your story, it starts to open this little thing up in you where it becomes safer and safer and safer.
Yeah.
If it is a safe and non-judgmental space, where we can tell more and more and more about ourselves, truth. And then we're not hiding it. It really is like a release valve for shame.
Yeah, I think
When we
so.
open up, we just start to accept ourselves more as we see other people. And even if they don't comment, it's just even that quiet presence of other people listening and just maintaining their own quiet presence. There's something that really, some of that hot, scared, shameful energy just dissolves in that presence.